to somebody else will make da'wah to them. If we don't represent our community, someone else will represent our community. If we don't represent ourselves, somebody else will represent us. And that was what was happening, that a very extreme right-wing group of people were representing our community without even getting sanction from our community, and telling them the worst possible things you could ever imagine. So Muslims were forced to get involved, to participate, to engage, and that's where we saw the change. Alhamdulillah.
Assalamu alaikum, Shah. What would you like Muslims to say to non-Muslims to entice them to Islam?
Okay, how as Muslims we can entice non-Muslims towards Islam? Usually Muslims, we want people to understand our religion, to understand us, and so on. So I believe for a start, what we should do is to understand them first. Learn more about their religion, learn more about their beliefs. Because if someone, let's say a Christian, comes to your doorstep and say, I want to preach Christianity to you, what would be your response? Sorry, I'm not interested. But if someone comes to your doorstep and say, I'm interested to know more about Islam, can you tell me about Islam? You would be interested, right? So what we could do is talk to the non-Muslims, learn and understand their beliefs, their religion. In that sense, they would have more, interest to talk about religion. Because in Malaysia, usually speaking about religion is a taboo. It's a very sensitive matter. You with your religion, I with my religion, never talk about religion. So this is a good way to break the ice. But before you can do that, of course, you get to know one another better, win the trust, etc. Then you ask about their religion, they start telling about their religion. You ask few questions, ask easy questions. Do not ask questions to put their religion down, but ask questions to understand better. Tell them, what was the celebration yesterday? I saw a lot of people outside the church, outside the temple. Can you tell me more about it? So in this way, you're building relationships. And when you ask short questions, they're going to give lengthy explanation. After some time, they get tired. So they will start thinking, instead of me answering the questions, let me ask the question now. Now they ask about Islam. This is our opportunity to explain Islam. And what I would suggest is first to clear misconceptions against Islam first. Because non-Muslims usually have certain misconceptions about Islam. If we tell them 10 good things about Islam, they would say, yes, these 10 things are good, but however, there are certain bad things that you also have in Islam. If you can clear those first, and then tell them about Islam, I believe it will be better, more efficient, inshallah.
What method and language should we follow in preaching to non-Muslims? Especially since nowadays, the image of Muslims and Islam is quite bad.
That's a very good question. I agree with the brother when he said about we need to understand the non-Muslim. When we look at the Sahaba, may Allah be pleased with all of them, when they spoke to the Quraysh, or they spoke to the Arabs at the time of revelation, they knew what to say, because they were the Arabs. So they knew how to communicate to them effectively. Now we live in a bit of a difficult world at the moment, because many of us live in multicultural societies. Many immigrants have moved from one place to the other, and we've enclosed ourselves in ghettos. So we don't really understand the other person. So I think one way is first and foremost to understand that person. It's the style of the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Very famous example is when a young man came to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he asked to commit fornication. Now instead of shouting, screaming, throwing the death threats, he said, "Stay here." And he replied in a way that this young man understood, which was, would you want your mother or your sister to do the same thing? And straight away he understood. So the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he knew how to penetrate the mind and the heart of the human being. He understood them. Similarly, we need to try and do that. That's the first thing. The second thing is two types of da'wah in the way. The first type is da'wah of the tongue or of the written word, da'wah of the word. And the second is da'wah of action, of our behavior. Now with the written word, we first and foremost we must know how to deliver a certain argument or things that we know about Islam. If we don't know something, then we should say, I don't know. But I know someone who does. Call up your shaykh, etc., and find the answer. The most beautiful thing is when you speak to non-Muslims, you don't always speak to them as if you know everything. There's a problem there. Because generally, from my experience, non-Muslims, or even human beings, we all have insecurities. No one has a perfect character that way. And sometimes when we give da'wah, we put our da'wah hat on. We become someone else all of a sudden. We become another human being. I know everything, I have all the answers. And sometimes that's not real, it's not very human. They can't taste it. They understand what you're saying, but it just doesn't apply because there's something wrong here. It's not 100% sincere. So sometimes you say, I don't know. But I know how to get the answer. So we need to speak with knowledge and with information that we know to be true. Secondly, we need to behave as a Muslim should behave. To be honest, I'm starting to believe that's one of the most important things that we should do. We can debate until the cows come home. We can discuss and have intellectual gymnastics and dialogue with the academics and win our argument. But at the end of the day, the thing that makes someone take that, as I said in my presentation, that knowledge that's abstract and make it internal is an emotional thing. The Quran is an emotional document. Because it's both. It seeks to engage your mind and your soul and your emotion. So, the reason I'm saying this is the following. I'll give you an example. In the UK, the Oxford University. Everyone heard of Oxford University? Yeah. Very famous. Maybe some of you might go there one day, inshallah. Oxford University did this study on behavior and attitude. And what they did, they wanted to do a study on racism. Racism, not liking the other race. I'm Malay, I'm Chinese, I'm Greek, you're Turkish, we're better than you. This kind of superiority, racism. And what they did, they went to an anti-racist campaign group. A group that was calling for unity, not racism. Yeah? The academics went to a group calling for unity and not racism, yeah? And then they did this study. It was on a computer screen. And on the computer screen you had different faces flashing. Black guy, Chinese guy, Malay, Greek, Turkish, yellow, green, red, everybody, yeah? And every time it flashed a face, it would have two words on the left and right. A negative word and a positive word. Then you have to use your mouse to click on which word you think represented the face. Yeah? So black guy comes in, good. White guy comes in, good. Malay one comes in, bad, for example. I'm not saying a bad, it's just an example. Chinese, whatever the case may be. Now, the results of the study, and this is if anyone does social research, it was a positive correlation. It was statistically valid. That the people who worked in the anti-racism campaign group were all racist. They were all racist. They didn't believe it. So they retested it. Again, all racist. They didn't believe it. It was like, oh my God, what's going on? Because what they did, they timed how long it would take to go to the foreign face for the positive word as well. So everyone's inclination was towards racism. Huge problem. But their mind, the aql, the intellect was all convinced that racism is wrong. But the inner disposition was different. So what happened? After a few months, they tried to test it again. Same results. A few more months, one person did it on their own. And they got a good result. This white guy, he got a good result. He's not racist anymore. Everyone's walking around him, surrounding him in the office saying, what happened, what happened, what happened? So discussing about, what kind of things he was experiencing, and during the night, he had no sleep. And he was watching the Olympics, running for Britain. And most of the runners were black. Now the conclusions of the study, was that forget what you believe in sometimes, or what you think, your aqli, your intellectual gymnastics.